Factor polynomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now what we're concentrating on here is when our a, the coefficient of our x squared, is greater than 1. And so this is when I use trial and error with grouping. So let's work a few problems. Okay, we are supposed to factor 5x squared minus 17x plus 14. There is not a GCF. This is definitely not the difference of two squares. There are three terms here. It's not a perfect square trinomial because the first term and the last term would have to begin by being perfect squares. I'm going to go to trial and error. I'm going to use what I call the long way, or with grouping, because I have 5 in front of my x squared, a number other than 1. In order to use grouping, I need 4 terms. I want to take these 3 terms and change them to 4 terms. How do we do that? You begin by multiplying the coefficient of your x squared term and your constant. 5 times 14 is 70, a positive 70. So I'm going to use 2 positives to get to 70, or 2 negatives, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Well, in this case, I am going to use 2 negatives because I want negative 17x for my middle term. What can I multiply to get 70? 1 times 70, 2 times 35. 3 will not divide evenly into 70, neither will 4. 5 times 14. I'm trying to get 17. 6 will not divide evenly into it. 7 times 7 times 10. 7 times 10 is 70. 7 plus 10 is 17. But remember, I did want negative 17, so I will have negative 7 times a negative 10. When I multiply, I get positive 70, but when I add them, I will get negative 17. This is what's going to help me factor this problem. So I'm going to rewrite this trinomial with 4 terms. Bring down your 5x squared, rewrite negative 17x, and bring down your last term, which happens to be 14. I will have 5x squared. You told me to use negative 10 and negative 7. Does not matter which way, in which order you put them. But it's negative 17x, so I'll put negative 10x minus 7x. And bring down the positive 14. I have 4 terms. And when you have 4 terms, you think grouping, which means lots of GCFs. What's a GCF of just the first 2? It will be 5x. Bring out your 5x, and that will leave me x minus 2. What is your GCF of just the second 2? You may be saying 7, and you're almost right. My first term is negative. I'm going to choose to, instead of 7, bring out a negative 7, and let's see if that works. Negative 7 times x. Yes, that's negative 7x. Good so far. Negative 7, to get to a positive 14, I would have to multiply that by negative 2. But look here. I have 5x times x minus 2 minus 7 times x minus 2. We can do the GCF again. I'm going to pull out the x minus 2. That is what they have in common. When I pull that out, I will have 5x minus 7 left for my other parentheses, for my other binomial. My answer is, when I factor 5x squared minus 17x plus 14, it is equal to x minus 2 times 5x minus 7. On this first one, I am going to have you check this. I am going to do FOIL real quickly. I'm going to multiply this binomial times this binomial with FOIL. The first term, x times 5x, is 5x to the second. The outer terms, x times a negative 7, negative 7x. The inner terms, negative 2 times a positive 5x, that will be negative 10x. And the last terms, negative 2 times a negative 7, remember you're multiplying, that will be positive 14. Let's combine your like terms. So I will have 5x squared minus 17x plus 14. And so when I multiplied my answer, I got 5x squared minus 17x plus 14. And that is exactly what we started with when I was going to factor. And that's not magic. That is mathematics. Okay, let's factor 7a squared plus 22a plus 3. There's not a GCF. It's not the difference of two squares. It's not a perfect square trinomial. So I will factor this using trial and error. I'm going to do this with grouping because I have a number other than 1 in front of my a squared. I will begin by multiplying 7 times 3. I will get 21, a positive 21. I can use 1 times 21 or 3 times 7 to multiply and get back to 21. Which one of these combinations will get me 22? Yes, 1 and 21. And they will both be positive because a positive times a positive will get me a positive 21. But then when I'm adding them, I'm able to get a positive 22 for my middle term. So I'm going to rewrite this trinomial with 4 terms. So it is now 7a squared. Instead of 22a, it would be plus 1a plus 21a. You told me to use 1 and 21 plus 3. So notice I brought down my first term and my last term, but my middle term I replaced with the numbers that you decided will help me factor this problem. So now we are going to do the GCF. We have 4 things. We are going to do grouping. I want to take out the GCF of just the first 2 terms, then just the second 2 terms. In the first 2 terms, my GCF is simply a. When I pull out a, that will leave me 7a plus 1. Looking at the second 2 terms, they're both positives. I'm going to pull out a positive 3. 3 times 7a will get me back to 21a. 3 times 1 will get me back to 3. I now have a times 7a plus 1 plus 3 times 7a plus 1. And yes, what do they have in common? You're right, it is 7a plus 1. When I pull that GCF out, I will have a plus 3 remaining for my other binomial. Once again, it doesn't matter which order you write these binomials. I could write a plus 3 times 7a plus 1. Let's do one more. Okay, we want to factor 2a squared minus 9a minus 18. There is not a GCF. This is definitely not the difference of 2 squares because there are 3 things here. So I'm going, and it's not a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to factor this, trial and error a long way, or with grouping. In order to do that, I need to multiply 2 times negative 18, and I will get negative 36. Oh, negative 36. So in order to get negative 36, I will have to multiply a positive times a negative, which means I will be subtracting to try to get 9. Well, let's start. 1 times 36. When I subtract that, I will get 35. Not what I want. 2 times 18. When I subtract that, I will get 16. Not what I want. 3 times 12. When I subtract that, there it is. I will get 9. But I want negative 9. So I'm going to put the negative with my largest number here. So I'm going to use a positive 3 times a negative 12 to get negative 36. But when I add them, I will get negative 9. So we are going to rewrite this trinomial using 4 terms. Bring down your first term to a squared. Instead of negative 9a, you told me to write positive 3a minus 12a. Don't forget to put that a with these numbers. Then bring down your last term, the negative 18. It did not matter in which order I wrote the positive 3 or the negative 12. I could have switched those. Now I'm going to do the GCF of the first 2 terms and then the second 2 terms. And I'm going to hope and pray that something matches up so I can do the GCF again. What's the GCF of these first 2? Pull out the a. So a times 2a is 2a squared, and a times 3 is 3a. Ooh, look at this. Be careful with these negatives. For negative 12a minus 18, I see those negatives. I'm going to pull out a negative number. 12 and 18, 6. We'll divide into both of those evenly. Negative 6 times a positive 2a will get me back to negative 12a. Negative 6 times a positive 3 will get me back to negative 18. I now have a times 2a plus 3 minus 6 times 2a plus 3. Just wondering, do they have anything in common? You're right. They have 2a plus 3 in common. I will pull that GCF out, and that will leave me a minus 6 for my other binomial. Make sure you write that in parentheses. Okay, good luck with your factoring.